Good afternoon, everyone. I am Grace Hong. I am a developer from the MaIS team. To be honest, when I scheduled this tech briefing, I thought maybe I get 5 or 10 people to show up and I'll be happy. So today I walk in and I look at this room. Oh my God, I am nervous. Okay, so if you cannot hear me in the back, just holler. And if I say something wrong, ignore. Okay. So today I will be talking about MaIS web service. So does anyone know what MaIS stands for? And a hint, it does not stand for Muhammad Ali is special. Okay. Who know? Anybody?
Middleware.
Thank you. You are? Yeah, great. Oh, you. Student web service. Yes. All right. Thank you, George. Okay. So yes. So middleware and integration is the team, and a lot of people know us as the registry. And why we're called the registry? It's because we have a lot of data, and data we wanted to share with the campus for good use. So today's session is really to tell you how you can get that data and what's the best way to for our data to help you automate your process. Okay. So before we start, I think I do better if I know my audience. But we have I was going to go around the room and then for you to introduce yourself. But I think let's just do this. Anyone has an existing integration? Raising your hand. Oh, okay. So most of us are new here, huh? Okay, so that's great. Thank you for being here. This is exactly what we want. Not only existing clients to be here. If they're not here, that means they're happy. They don't have to be here. And then we also want to recruit new clients to come and use our services. So this is what I'm curious to know about, whether you're here because you have questions for us, or whether you have an issue with current integration that you need answers for, or you just want to know new integration that you can use. Now, at the end of the talk, there will be a short survey, a different survey from Don's signing sheet, and that will give us some idea of what the next talk or presentation we can do that people may be interested in. So keep that in mind. With that, I'm going to skip to our agenda today. So first of all, we're going to introduce to you what the team does. What do we do besides drinking coffee and having lunch every day? We have 5 developers and 3 analysts in the team, and it's a good size of team. And that's because we support a lot of services within Stanford. I will also introduce 6 web services that we have available for everyone to use. We'll do a small demo followed by question and answer. Oh, and if you have any questions throughout the slides, we will try to address them as on the spot if we could. If the answer is, we can provide the answer right away. Now, if it's going to take a little bit longer to answer, depending on how much time we have, we may ask you to hold the question at the end or hold the question till Q&A. And I'm sure after the presentation, you're all excited. You want to get on it right away, and we'll tell you what your next step will be. How do you get started? And then that little survey I talked about. Okay, so I would like to introduce Helen Clark. She is our analyst and our data specialist in the MaIS group, and she's going to talk about registry and data overview.
Great. Thanks, Grace, and welcome, everybody. Thanks for your time this afternoon. In addition to our 5 developers and our 3 analysts, we are led by technical manager Arvinder Singh, who's in the back, as well as our current director, Marie Young. So thank you for being here as well. So I have about 10 minutes or so on the agenda, and to tell you everything about registry data in 10 minutes is totally impossible. We could spend all day talking about the data we have in the registry. So I'm going to give you a very, very high overview. I encourage you to think about your system's needs, your department's needs, and engage in discussion with us as you evaluate and or expand your use of MaIS Web Services. So you'll note in this slide I have this big registries right in the middle. And by that, I'm including all sorts of registry information. When I first started in the registry group years ago, I dealt with only person information, so I'm very likely to say the person registry. But we really have an account registry, an organization registry, a course registry, an authority registry. And when I say registries here, I'm talking about the whole collection of information for all those: account, sponsorship, person, course, authority, work group, I forgot, and organization. So where do we get all that data? That data doesn't just originate in the registry. It really comes, Don, is there any way we can get rid of that green screen here, this little box?
Unfortunately, no.
Okay, well, up in the upper left-hand corner, that says PeopleSoft HR and PeopleSoft CS, which is the student and the HR side of PeopleSoft. So we get a lot of person and course information sent from into the registry from the PeopleSoft system. Oracle Financial sends us a lot of project, task, and award and financial information into the registry. The campus card system. Anyone here from campus card? No, but the campus card system, all those numbers on your IDs as well as your image is sent from the campus card system to the registry. The Slack HR system, as well as both the adult and the children's HR systems, send us people information. So once we have all that information into the registry, it's a moving target often, members of the campus community then can add to or update that information. It's not that. Okay. It's not that important. We can add to that information or change that information. I'm sure we've all been to accounts.stanford.edu at one point or another. Authority Manager is a web application. It's a central place where Stanford managers can grant specific privileges or authorities to individuals to do administrative tasks in other systems around the university. Organization Manager allows a department administrator to add to information about an organization. I didn't mention, but we get information about organizations from the university budget office on a quarterly basis. You may have been in Sponsorship Manager. If a person is not tightly affiliated with the university such that they automatically have SUNet ID services, they can be sponsored for SUNet ID services through Sponsorship Manager. Stanford YOU, as I call it, so I don't get it confused with Stanford Who, but Stanford YOU is a place where we all go to maintain our contact information, update our address if we move, specify our alert SU information. And then Workgroup Manager allows campus community members to create and manage work groups that can be used for a variety of different access controls, as well as linked to other services in our campus infrastructure. So if you take the information from our business services, as well as updates and changes that the Stanford community can make, that really comprises the information in the registry. Now we're getting a lot of information from a lot of different sources, so we need, in the registry, we have processes and logic to integrate that information. And sometimes we run into data conflicts. Is Helen really a staff member or is Helen really a student? And we have logic that sort of helps us sort that out and integrate that, and that allows us to push that information out to our downstream system in a consistent and accurate way. So one time we're not pushing Helen out as a student, and the next time we're not pushing her out as a staff member. Sometimes this managing the data conflicts can be quite time consuming, and I'll go into some of those situations in just a bit. So we send data to our downstream systems. We have over 20 downstream systems currently. One of the big ones you probably all heard of is the LDAP directory, which then feeds the Active Directory. We also have, and many of you may represent, some departmental systems, everything from our AMCOM paging and messaging service system to Canvas and Courseworks, as well as Lane Library, Tulare Library, LSDB, Parking and Transportation, RDE, Occupational Health and Safety also gets information from us. And I'm probably forgetting a few more. We also send information back to systems that are also contributors. So Oracle Financials, PeopleSoft HR, Campus Card, and to a certain extent Slack, and both the children and adult hospitals are both contributors to data in the registry as well as consumers of data in the registry. So this is very, very high level, but it sort of gives you an appreciation of where data is coming from and where it's going. In reality, it's a pretty complex system. We have a messaging service that handles over 500,000 events that send these various software components, changes of data and statuses. And we have over 30 posters of information and harvesters of information. Any questions on this diagram? As I say, it's very, very high level. We could drill down in each one of these subject matters. Okay, so a little bit more about registry data that you and your systems can obtain through our web services. We have lots of account data. An account, you can use simultaneously, at least I do, pretty much as your SUNet ID. So we have information on the actual SUNet ID value, H.L. Clark in my case, as well as the account status, and as well as the account level. Am I at base? Am I at full services? We have lots of person information, and that's a very common piece of data that people want. We have identifiers, so a person in the registry should only appear once, even if both, say, the School of Medicine, the university, is sending, say, Carl to the registry, and also SHC, the adult hospital, is sending an information flow about Carl to the registry. We in the registry should only have one and one only record for Carl, and that record should contain information from both the School of Medicine as well as the adult hospital. So we have certain identifiers to identify that one record. SUNet ID being one of them, University ID being another, your campus card information, those are also considered identifiers. Any source reference ID, so any way that School of Medicine or that SHC is identifying Carl, we will have that information as an identifier. We also, as I mentioned, we have image information. So with special permission from data owners, you can get image information from as an identifier. We also have affiliation information. Now, for computing infrastructure purposes, the registry classifies a person into one of 4 buckets or affiliations. You're a student of some kind, you're a faculty of some kind, you're a staff member of some kind, or you're an affiliate of some kind. An affiliate is a person whose relationship with the university isn't quite that of a student, faculty, or staff member. They may be sponsored for a SUNet ID. They may have paid the library and hold a courtesy card, so they have hold privileges in the library. Or for certain things like a Hoover Fellow, they may be actually entered into the university PeopleSoft system and then flow into the registry as an affiliate. So those are affiliates. So every person is, and every affiliation fits into one of these 4 buckets. And we rank, let's get back to our Carl example. If the School of Medicine is sending Carl's information as Carl P. Clark, and the adult hospital is sending Carl Paul Clark to the registry, and that's a registered name, what name really is the registry supposed to use, and what name will the registry send down to downstream systems? Well, the highest ranking affiliation will dictate or drive what name we use. And so we rank affiliations, and in general, a student affiliation is a higher ranking than faculty, is a higher ranking than staff, is a higher ranking than affiliate. That is in general. There are some, when you get into the different flavors of studentness and the different flavors of staffness, there are some changes there. So we do rank affiliations, and you will see when we look at some person XML documents, you'll see those rankings. We do identity resolution, and we spend a lot of time in this. If a person, two systems, maybe more, are sending information about a person, but the data that person, the identifying data that those systems are sending are not enough to determine that it's the same person, okay, we may end up with 3 Sally Clarks in the registry, when in reality, those 3 records represent the same person. And that's called duplicate IDs, and we spend a lot of time resolving those person conflicts. So, but by the time you all get the data, hopefully those have been resolved. But that's one of the things we do to person data. Let me double check my notes and make sure I'm not forgetting anything here. Let's see. Oh, we also have privilege group information, and that privilege group information can come from a variety of different, either system-generated groups or a work group member that dictates that you're going to be in a certain group. So that's considered person information and would be housed in the person XML document that your system would pick up. Any questions so far on people data? Okay, so we'll get on to then course data. PeopleSoft sends us course data. We have information about all the different courses that are being taught in a given term, the different sections, who's enrolled in those sections, as well as who's teaching those sections. Authority information basically comes from Authority Manager, and that's the web application that allows managers and authorized people to grant privileges to different people to perform administrative tasks. And all those authorities granted in Authority Manager are represented in an individual's privilege information, or an XML document we call the author's authority XML document. And that includes, when I say scope and limits, I may be able to view in the PeopleSoft system people only from my organization. Or I may have spending rights, but I only can spend $1,000 on a particular PTA. So that's the organization scope and the limits. And then we also have a lot of workgroup information that's available through the API, and I know some of the people in the audience use this. We have information on workgroups in general and their properties, as well as members and administrators of those workgroups. So we have a lot of data. It's very valuable. It's not necessarily we're the custodians of the data, but most of this data is coming from source systems. Since it's not really our registry data, you do need to use this data. An organization or an application does need to obtain data owner approval. That's not something we can give because we don't necessarily own the data, but you need data owner approval to obtain a lot of this information. I'm going to point out the MaIS website, and I think we'll make these slides available, but the MaIS website is currently in transition. We are reviewing, updating, and moving it to the UIT website, but there is some good documentation down way at the bottom. There's some good documentation, especially on person, and if you have any questions on affiliation ranking, those questions, there's a lot of good documentation that still holds true down on our MaIS website. So any questions about data? It's very, very high level, but I think it will give you a foundation for what's to come. Well, we match on name. Oh, yes, thank you. So the question is, what do we do if we have two people coming in with the exact same name? So we match not only on name, but also date of birth, and if we have it, the last four of the SSN. If all that still is the same, we will go to department, any data really that we can use, department, email addresses, past sort of affiliation history. But at times we do need to reach out to the department or to the actual individual to verify and ask questions. Have you ever been associated with the university before? If so, about when was the time frame? And we have had colossal mix-ups. I mean, we are very careful, and when in doubt, we will create multiple records for a person until we can be very certain that that information represents the same person. And we do have ways to merge two individual records into one. Great question, thank you. All right, well, thanks very much for your attention, and I'm going to turn the presentation over to Grace again, who will dive into the web services. Thank you.
So with that, now that you know Registry has data, and Registry has many different types of data. So the next thing I'm going to introduce is that how can you get those data? So what is the best way? We are going to talk about 6 different web services today. And you will see that these corresponds to the data category that Helen just talked about. Our web services are RESTful APIs, and we support mostly HTTP GET operations, except for Workgroup. And the reason being, this is really targeted for clients who want to be consumers of our data, right? In Helen's diagram, you see that there are feeds of data coming into the registry. So that is not being discussed here. These are really meant for consumers of registry data. And all of our services support implement two-way SSL authentication. So we all know that data need to flow over SSL, right? So that they are encrypted, data is transported safely. Now, when we talk about SSL authentication, most people know it as one-way SSL, which means server authenticating to the client to tell it to validate the identity of the web service that you are hitting. So let's say we're sitting here, this presentation gets boring. You want to go to Amazon and buy that piece of the book that you've been wanting to. So you bring up your browser, you hit Amazon.com, right? When your HTTP request flows all the way to the Amazon web server, what the server is going to do is it's going to send you back a service certificate to tell the client and your browser that you indeed ended up at Amazon's website, Amazon's web server. You did not get redirected to La La Land or some phishing site, and that you can safely continue your browsing on Amazon.com. And that's what we know of as one-way SSL. So if one-way is server to client, guess what two-way is? Client back to the server. So when you're contacting the MaIS web services, and as soon as you hit that URL, our web is going to send you a server certificate to tell you that, hey, you did reach MaIS web server. Now the next thing is the client needs to send client certificate back to the MaIS web service so that we know who is trying to access our data and whether the person has the right privilege to continue or not. So why is this important? This is important because before you want to access our service, you need to get a client certificate that is signed by the Registry CA, which is our certificate authority. And I capture a step-by-step process of how you can do that later in documented here. So just keep in mind that this is something that you need to do. And also, since it's SSL, the traffic is over SSL, we are currently TLS version 1.0 compliant. We are in the process of becoming version 1.2 compliant, and it's going to go live on February the 4th. So again, why does that matter? It matters because you as the client, in order to talk to the registry to get the data, you need to talk the right TLS protocol, right? So if you are running TLS 1.0, we are talking 1.2, guess what? The handshake is going to fail. So let's say I am a Java developer, so I write Java code. And if you're developing your client code in Java, I can tell you if you're running JDK 1.8, you are in luck. So there's nothing you need to do. By default, it supports TLS 1.2. Now, if you're running JDK 1.7, you're still okay. The default is not 1.2, but you can make it do 1.2 just by specifying a parameter. Now, if you're running JDK 1.6, I am sorry, you're out of luck. You need to upgrade. It's not supposed to be a joke, but
Sorry.
no, I'm just kidding. There, I am also gonna show you a UIT website with really good documentation. Okay. So if you go to uit.stanford.edu developers, this is the space for, I guess, all things UIT developers. Under services and API, all right. So this sort of is an entry point to our services and API. So if you ever want to get more information about it, this is the place to go. And you will see the 6 web services that I will be talking about today in here. And in fact, okay, I think I'm done with this slide. So let me move on to the next slide. Oh, any questions so far? Yes. Right. So yes. So before you get the certificate, you need to get data owner approval so that. Oh, sorry. The question is, do you need to get data owner approval before you get the certificate? And the answer is yes. I will show you a checklist of how to start the process. And then the very first thing is you need to identify what you want and then get the data approval, and then you can get the certificate.
Let me just interject. So for data owner approval, you can help broker that for you. Not that okay. So if you want any data, is offered your fund. And card that will require a to the office. For now.
Give a quick summary.
Well, so if the question is if you need data owner approval, the response was MaIS team can help to broker that data owner approval process for you. And all you have to do is get the help SU or a ServiceNow request started, and then we will definitely walk you through the process if you need to.
In your UAT environment,
the question is in our environment, whether it's TLS 1.2 or not. We have 4 environments actually. Besides production, we have dev, test, UAT, And currently, our UAT environment is TLS 1.2, so that if anyone's interested to integrate and try it out, they could. And then it is also, we upgraded it to 1.2 so that we can test with our existing clients. Okay. Thank you for the questions. Now the next slide is, we're going to dive right into accounts. So when we talk about accounts, like Helen said, it's mostly about SUNet ID accounts. And and the most important element of the account data for me is your status, right? Whether your account is active or inactive, and how do someone get a list of all the inactive or active account information? And this is how where you get that. I am going to go to the API page. So I imagine, when you started using the API, this is your first entry point. You're going to come here, and this has details about everything you need to know about API. What kind of format it supports, what are the error code, and what are the URLs you can use, and what's the format. Right, and each block is a method that you can use to get what you need. So most of our pages follow the same format. Now account. So account is the latest addition to our web services that we provide. So we were able to add both XML and JSON support for accounts information. Let's just go and look at one example. I think that will probably, visual make things easier to look at. Okay. So this is what oh, by the way, I'm using Postman. This is a plugin for Chrome. It's just a HTTP client that you can use. Postman.
Postman.
Yeah. All right. So can you guys see this? Too small? I'm gonna try this in the browser. Okay, so before, I clicked too fast. So before we come here, you saw the little pop-up box, right? And that pop-up box is asking me which client certificate do you want to use to send it to the server side. So that shows you that this is two-way SSL in action. Okay, so I think this is slightly better. So this is account. This is one example of the account XML document. Now this is also available in JSON, but in the browser it sends the header application XML by default. So we're seeing this in XML format here. But if you look at the Postman, it actually shows you JSON data. But the data should be consistent. And you can see what's available here, right? You get to see my name, my ID, the status, as I promised you, and the description of who I am, along with a list of all the services that is included with your accounts. So most of the people who uses our account integration currently uses the account status. For example, Oracle Financial, who is our partner, they use a account service to end date, account status to end date someone's Oracle Financial access. right? Lindsay's here. She can tell you that's how it's working. Thank you. Let me see. So if you're ever interested in what my AFS directory is, you can get that here. Oh, here. And I also include in as part of the XML document, you can see that this is the URL to get this. This is the URL to get this XML doc. Actually, I'm gonna show you a different link. It's more useful in the other link. And then the status date. And you notice that if you're a developer, you're gonna be very happy to see this number, the date in long representation, because you don't ever have to parse this. You can just take that number and plug it in, and boom, you got your date. Something else I want to show. So if you don't care about all those services information, there is a light version of it. If I can type. There is a light version of it where it just gives you the essential information that you need. And you will see that that URL is here again. So you can just copy and paste that URL to see the full XML of that person. See accounts. Another example, School of Medicine, they actually uses our account web service to purge inactive accounts once a week, right? Yeah. So, which reminds me, I have to show you how to get a list of the inactive account. So here. Okay. So here, I don't know if you can see this, right? There is a search capability in this API. You can specify what type of account you're looking for. So you see that type equals to self. So that means a person SUNet ID. What's the status? Inactive. And then the status days. So what this gives you is a list of all the inactive account in the past day. So that's how School of Medicine was able to get that list of all the inactive account and purge their access. Any questions here? I think I'm a little behind in time, so I'm gonna get moving. Okay, person. So Person XML is one of our most popular and most integrated XML service. And why is that? Well, like Helen said, right? Person, we have so much person data that we can share with campus. And also, she also mentioned we should only have one and only one person record in the registry for every one of us. And I am a staff at Stanford, and I imagine most of you are. So our situations are very straightforward, where we only have one affiliation within campus. Now, let's say a Slack director may also be a faculty at the physics department, right? So this person would actually have two affiliation within this person's record, one being a staff affiliation, the other one being a faculty affiliation. Right, so it is the registry's job to make sure that all those information coming from different sources comes together in one record in the proper order, and then send it out to the clients who want to consume them. So, okay. All right. Now, okay. So let's take a look at what person has. Again, I'm gonna look at my record. This is the pop-up I was talking about, right? Then you get to select which client certificate you want. Okay. First of all, this is running in our test environment. So data is scrambled. This is really not my real name and not my real address. So you can stop writing it down. Not my real birthday either. Well, okay, I don't think it's here. But as you can see, there's name, address, bio demo, in this XML doc, address, phone number. A lot of information is here. I'm going to scroll all the way down to the affiliation section. So we talk about affiliation, and it is reflected here. I am a Stanford staff person, and that's how it shows up as. Along with that, you see a lot of other data. Standard means I work 40 hours. I'm a full-time person. Parking and transportation uses that to determine who can get parking permits or not. My job title and identify information. So we get our ID card number comes in from ID card office. That will also show up as an identifier. Your university ID is also one of the identifier. Your SUNet ID shows up here. Your alias also shows up here. Pre-groups. Helen talked about pre-groups. You can see I have a lot of pre-groups. And I think campus uses pre-group a lot to determine access control for the different departments. Yes, Matt? Yeah. Right. So Max is our analyst, and he handles identity resolution all the time. So he has a really good comment. If you had a previous university ID with campus, it will also show up in your person XML document. Now, some of the use cases, there are a lot of examples of how person XML is being used on campus. But what I want to talk about is what other people, an example of what I think could have been done. Last year, at the end of the year, I went for my fitness assessment, and we get a free berries for that, right? So when I walk into the gym and I talked to the lady for the very first time, she asked me to go to a computer, typing my name, my university ID, and my address, right? And then so that she can create an account for me in her system. And I was thinking, well, why don't you have an integration with the registry so that you can get all those data from our feed before I even show up and enter those data myself, right? Had you had that, all you have to do is get my university ID, type into the system, my information shows up, and all you have to do is verify. And if my address ever changes, if I change it from Stanford U, right, you automatically get the updated address, right? You don't have to wait another year when I'm coming for my next assessment to correct that address information. So I think there's a lot of good use with person XML documents, and people use it for, I guess there are many creative solutions we can provide with those data. Any questions so far? Okay. Going back to my slides. Yeah. So privilege groups are generated. There are two ways privilege. How is privilege group generated? Right. That's the question. So there are two sources of how pre-groups are created. One is from Workgroup. If you are added to as a member to the Workgroup, they automatically translate into a pre-group. They are also system-generated pre-group that the registry team adds for individual person based on different conditions. And these are called system-generated pre-group, and you won't see them reflected in the Workgroup. Okay, you run me off. I need to pick it up. Okay. All right. So something else I want to call out is photo images. So in the person XML document, we have a lot of data in the XML document, but some of them are more sensitive than others, and you would need extra privilege in order to see those documents. And photo image, your pictured image information is one of them. So in the XML doc, this is your image information. It's a base 64 text encoding, but by default you won't get that, and you need to request for additional data owner approval to get that. So I'm just gonna leave it at that. I'm running out of time, so I need to pick it up. All right, enough about person. The next one I'm gonna talk about is student. Okay, so student web service. Very similar to person XML document service, and except that this is for students only. So when do you use student? When do you use person? Right? You use student web service if all you care about are students. You never worry about employees, staff, or faculty. Then you can stick with student web service. And student web service provides additional student academic information at the end of the XML document. So something like their GPA or their advisor information is also included, and that's not available in the person XML doc. So if you need to support the entire campus community, I would say person is your better bet. Oh, and also student web service provides course information as well. So student service here. Students. We're just gonna look at one quick example to move on. So let's see. You can get student. Okay, person, Evan. You notice that all these top part looks very similar to what we talked about in person until you scroll to the bottom and see student information. And then, like I said, advisor information is here, GPA information is here. You can also get enrollment information for students. What classes the student has enrolled in. And you can even narrow it down to which term. There are also course information provided through student web service. So all the information is in the API document. Just go try it out, and you'll see which flavor works better for you. Yes.
Course service. This not actually.
Yeah. So the question is, we have a separate course XML service that's also available, and that's the next slide I'm going to talk about. Anything else? Yes. Is Epic? The question is Epic's My House information included? And the answer is no. Okay. Right, and then the next one is so a lot of our clients use just a general student demographic information from student and also student enrollment data. VPSA, Vice Provost of Student Affairs, and Vice Provost of General Education, Graduate Education, and VPSA twice. Okay. So they all have some kind of applications that help students manage like awards or nominations or grants. And then they all have integration to student web service to grab all this information to populate their tools. So yeah, okay. Is there anyone interested in course? Or you wanted to know a course? Okay. So the next item is course. So besides student web service, we also provide a course XML document. This is a really straightforward web service where we only support two calls. One is to get a course by its ID. The other one is get all the courses by a term. And the get all the courses by a term is not available in student web service. So if you need that functionality, you have to use course XML. Yeah. Otherwise, other than that, everything get a course by ID is supported in student web service. Well, course instructor data is also in student web service. If you're interested to talk about the data element, we can talk offline. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay. So, I have a story to share with you. Take 2 minutes. So, since we're talking about course, last year, so we get our course data from PeopleSoft. So last year, just before graduation, our integration was broken because PeopleSoft was sending us really old course term information from 1964, right? So we figure out it must be a mistake. PeopleSoft sent us wrong data. However, after Sangeeta, our analysts, go and digging into the problem, it turns out that it was a Vietnam veteran who actually left for the war in the middle of his schooling here. And when he come back, didn't have a chance to finish until last year, decided to come back and finish his coursework and graduated. So just for that, we have to make sure that that integration is fixed and make us feel good about what we're doing here. So just a little story I want to share. Now, the next item on the agenda is authority, and I'm going to bring another of our senior developer, Helen T. and Tompkins. She's going to talk about authority.
Okay, so you guys have already kind of gotten an overview of what authority is all about from Helen C's introduction. But briefly, the authority system is our homegrown system for managing fine-grained authorization. So the use case for this is you have a complicated system that has security requirements that go beyond just, okay, give my password, now I'm in and I can do whatever. If you have a system where different people have very different levels of access and need to be able to do and see, lots of different levels of things, maybe different financial limits or for different organizations. So that's a scenario where you might want to use the authority system, and then clients of the authority system get the data that they need to implement security in their systems through the privileges XML document. So, prime examples would be PeopleSoft, both CS and HR, they use authority to control access within PeopleSoft. For example, like an HR person from the School of Engineering, maybe their manager would go into Authority Manager and grant them the authority to look up job records, but only for the School of Engineering. Within PeopleSoft, there's a lot of different things you can do. So PeopleSoft uses Authority Manager, and another obvious one is Oracle Financials. Different admins all over the university need to be able to do different things for different organizations with different approval limits, all kinds of things like that. So what happens is these downstream systems consume our privilege XML docs, and the contents of those are then translated into database tables on their side that they can use to actually implement the security in their system. And since we're short on time, I'm not going to make you guys actually look at a privileges XML doc, but you understand what it's about. So, and then Workgroup, once again, we've talked about this a little. So Workgroup is Stanford's homegrown system for creating groups of people, and in theory, you can use a workgroup to create a group for any purpose, whatever. In practice, of course, what they are most commonly used for overwhelmingly is access control, because workgroup memberships are propagated out to LDAP as privilege groups, and privilege groups can then be used to control access in Apache through the mod webauth LDAP Apache module. And that gives a really straightforward and convenient way of controlling access to anything that runs on Apache. And so that is what Workgroup tends to be used for. And because of this, a lot of clients find the Workgroup API very helpful to programmatically grant and revoke access. Certainly wouldn't want to have to be doing that through the UI on a massive scale. So one prime example of a client is the UIT email team. There is actually a 40,000 person plus work group representing everyone who can use Office 365. And they, of course, use that through the Workgroup API. We wouldn't want to have to add 40,000 people manually. The networking team uses work groups to control who can approve firewall rules in various domains. And we'll take a quick look at the Workgroup API. I want to highlight it briefly just because this is, I think, the only one of our APIs that doesn't support just GET. It supports a lot of different types of calls and methods. So, well, you can see right here on the page, you can get information about a work group. You can create a work group, delete a work group, add a member, remove a member, change various properties like description and other things that are too arcane to go into right now. And it's all done through this nice RESTful API, detailed beautifully in our documentation. So does anyone have any questions about authority or workgroup web services before I dive into a quick demo? Okay, so I think the next thing that we have on the agenda here, oh goodness gracious, my chart, is, well, just a little demo as you see, where I'm just going to show the simplest possible little bit of client code showing our APIs in action. I'll use the Workgroup API as an example since it has multiple HTTP methods and is a little more interesting. So let's see now. Okay, so I did this in Java because we use Java, but of course you can use any language. And this is just, I kept this as simple as humanly possible. You know, a real life application would probably have further requirements, you know, maybe making multiple REST calls to different services. So for example, I'm using system properties here. If you need to make REST calls to different services and you need to set the security attributes on a per request basis, I have example code for that too. But again, in deference to the non-programmers in the room, I just did the simplest possible little piece of code. So what we see here at a high level is I'm setting system properties to take care of the security. So what I've got here is a JKS or Java key store, and that's just simply the Java way of handling certificates. You take your certificate, you import it into a key store, and the JVM takes care of the rest, basically. So I have my own certificate that I imported into this key store, and I'm just setting the properties at a system level. My whole application is going to use the same key store and the same certificates. So what I'll demo first is just getting the details of a work group. And what's going to go on here is we set up an HTTP connection. We set the request method we want, and then at this point, when I call get input stream, this is when the call is actually made. And then I simply read out the response code, make sure it's okay, and scan the response body, and I'm just going to dump the body out raw to the command line. Again, in real life, you wouldn't just be doing this, you would be unmarshalling the XML response into your domain object and doing logic on it, etc. But this is just kind of a little thing to show working. So here we go. Okay, and we can see that the Workgroup API replied with status 200 OK. Got my little demo workgroup here. It only has one member right now, and that one member is Grace. Okay, so now I want to do a little bit more. So now what we will do is I'm going to put another member. I'm going to add Helen Clark to my work group. So I'm using the put method, and I am calling the proper URL. As you can see, it starts the same demo tech briefing, and now I'm calling the members URL and passing Helen Clark's SUNet ID for the new user. And so let's run that. All right, and there was no response body. I just got back a status of 200 OK. So if I now go back and do that yet again, review the members of the work group, we see that now my demo work group has two members, Grace and Helen. Yay. And all right, now I've decided that I don't want Helen Clark in my work group anymore. That was a mistake. Sorry, Helen. I'm going to take Helen out now, and so I will use the delete HTT method because we're being restful here. We're using delete. I'm going to make the call. And 200 OK. So I know that the delete went through properly, but if I want to double check and just make sure, once again, we'll do that get. Look at the workgroup membership. Okay, and we can see that we are back down to one member. So very simple example of system that is in practice used for some very large scale and complex requirements. And let's see. Back to slideshow. Going on to the Q&A. So for the Q&A portion, I'm going to go ahead and invite Grace and Helen Clark back up with me so that we can all be on hand to answer whatever questions may come up.
Do we have any questions from Fuji?
In order to be access to the web services, you have to
I think. Oh, so maybe. Oh, okay.
access to the web services.
Right. He said to gain access to one of the web services, does he need a full project proposal?
So in the next slide, I'll show you. Actually, why don't we just get into that? What the next steps are? Sure. So I think if you're interested in moving forward, I would encourage you to take a look at this integration checklist. And that checklist gives you an idea of how do you get started with our web services, right? And here, you scroll down. Okay. So the first thing we're going to ask you to do is just to review the data usage and our policies to make sure that you're not just getting the XML so that you can look at your coworkers, position or someone else's address, right? So you have to have legitimate reasons for using the XML or data, and that they are justified by whatever process you wanted to do. And then the next thing is you can contact me, and I will encourage you to do that via Jira if you have access or ServiceNow. And here is the data approval process. We have a list of the registry data owners here. But like Maria said, talk to us. We can broker that. We can help you to get what you need, and sort of just guide you through the process because we've done that with many of our clients. So. Yeah, take a look at that page. And once you know what you need and you're ready to get that certificate, this is our certificate how-to page, right? So hopefully there's these help. These answers the question you have about all the certificate how-to. How do you request a certificate, right? I also attach screenshots here so that hopefully it's self-explanatory. And when you request the certificate, we will ask you what service you want to access. So you don't by default get all the access to all these web services. It's depending on what you need, you have to choose whether it's accounts or person, or you can do combination. That's fine, but it is controlled separately. Once you requested that certificate, then our certificate admin will review the request and then approve and sign the certificate and send that certificate back to you, so that you can take that certificate and build a key store for you to use and start it and interfacing with the our web service that way. One thing I want to call out is we ask the clients to create one non-production certificate and one production certificate. We don't allow non-production certificates in the production environment and vice versa. And this is for security reasons. Download the certificate. Right. So once the certificate is signed, we'll send you an email. You can download the certificate and go build that key store for your client code. Now, if you're using WorkgroupAPI, there are a couple of extra steps that you need to do. We need to add your certificate as a workgroup admin, so you can add or delete things from workgroup. If you're simply a member to that workgroup, you can only view data. And then once you have that certificate, you're off. You can go off and develop your client code to connect to the API. Yay. Okay. Back. Yeah, going back. Okay, so if you have any questions regarding the formal process, here is a mailing list to communicate to our analysts. Now, if you have any suggestions or questions about the API, the technical aspect of it, this registry API is there for you for the tech community. If you have questions or you got the certificate, it simply won't work, then you can post your questions on Registry API, and we'll try to help you as much as we can. Yes? Yeah, that question I'm actually going to defer it to Maria. Right. So I think the question is, what is the distribution policy for our the registry data, right? And Maria, she's our director, and she can tell you all about our process.
So as we mentioned, we are not the data owners, and the answer to your question is no, you don't need an RF to get started, but you do need data ownership approval. And when you go through the approval process of either HR or student or the registrar's office, will ask you for a legitimate, and they will ask you those kinds of questions of data distribution. There is privacy settings, particularly for student data. FERPA is very much adhered to. And in the XML, I don't know if you can quickly pull up. We do expose that privacy setting to students. It's very important that you adhere to the privacy setting. Staff have
Maybe you talk a little bit closer to the
sorry.
microphone.
There it is. I was looking for her.
Sorry.
Does anyone from Blue Jeans need me to repeat what I have said so far? So as far as a distribution, we trust that we're all good stewards of university data, and so long as it adheres to the mission of the university of teaching, learning, and research, and that you have articulated that data distribution to the data owners and you've gotten that approval. At that point, the registry is out of the way. You've gotten the data from us. How you distribute it is within the guidelines of what the agreement is with the data owner, and that you adhere to the visibility setting. So for example, here, Maya Denome does not want her registered name to be visible to anyone. She only wants her display name to be visible. It'll be visible to the world. She does not want her permanent address to be visible to the world. She would like that private. Private means within the Stanford community only. So if you're going to distribute it to external agencies, you cannot display permanent address. Correct. You cannot distribute it, not even internally. So the question was internally, what can they distribute? And specifically for the registered name. And because this particular person has indicated that for her registered name, her visibility setting is none, then you cannot expose that name to anywhere. Correct. So the question is only private and world can be distributed internally, and the answer is yes. Private means within the Stanford University domain, and world is anywhere.
If I can clarify, for staff members, we have the ability to say private Stanford or world. And so if I say private for a certain something, if a business system needs that information, like my home address for healthcare information, IS needs it to determine what I'm eligible for or not eligible for, of course they can use it. But I would think that from a staff perspective, that we wouldn't want a system using other information if they didn't have to, unless I had specified Stanford. That's basically what the LDAP directory in Stanford does. If you mark something Stanford, then if you're an authenticated user into Stanford Who, then you can see that information. If you're a public user, then you would not see that. So at least for staff and faculty, we have 3 flavors.
Correct. Gary, do you know if, I'm asking Gary Hamilton from Registrar's office, student, do they have the Stanford only flavor? Yeah, I think it's for student, it's private or I think, yeah. Domain. The question is about LDAP directory, and my amorphous answer is not really. But we can help you. So the comment was, if there's a LDAP attribute that's available in either the person branch or the account branch, can you use it? And the answer to that is, and I'm speaking secondhand from data owners, is that if you have gotten permission for those LDAP branches, then you have permission for those attributes. And certain attributes within LDAP are also private. You need special permissions for them.
So if you have gotten permission for that, then you can use them accordingly.
Regarding student type, would we be able to find students?
So the question is about student type. Will you be able to distinguish between full-time student or honors squad program? Yes. So within the student web services, there is the program plan tag, I believe. So there's two ways you can. Go down. It's up. There you go. So there we go. So career, you see career right there is GR. Of course, if it's med, you'll see med. And then we've got the program plan. PhD is considered a degree, so you may have to do some extrapolation.
Does this pick up student groups at all?
Yes. We had a big fist pound. Yes. So if you scroll, yes, there you go. Yeah. Okay. We like that.
And the question to the affirmative was.
Oh, the question to the affirmative was, does the student web services include student groups? And the answer is yes. Enthusiastic fist pump in here. Does it include tuition group? I believe it does. Gary can help me out here. What are tuition groups? Tuition groups is like if you're half-time, full-time, correct? Co-terminal. It does. It does. It does. It's somewhere there. Yeah.
Those are student groups.
Yeah.
Just to clarify, after I made the call to the student API and I know that you're taking a course, I wanted to know if you are honors squad or like student. I would have to make another call. Which one to find out if that's
Okay, so the question is, after I make the call to the student web service and determine that you are enrolled in a class, I now want to know if you're in honors or some other. Right. So now you have possession of the entire XML. How you translate that XML, you can translate it any way you want at that point. Right? So you can look for the data elements that would help you extrapolate that information. You don't need to make another call because you're going to get the full document.
So when you make that call,
correct. You could, and so the comment was you need to make another call if the status has changed. Yes. Does that clarify?
Yeah,
kind
I
of.
think I should.
Okay, sure. We can talk offline more. Yeah.
Question regarding your data harvest. So there are events that actually somebody first data harvest.
Yes.
So how could we do that?
Okay.
And
So,
when do they update the data? So for example, there's a Stanford U, there's an event that triggered data harvesting. How do I get them? I know.
correct. So the question is about data harvesting and event-based kind of updates. Before I turn it over to Grace for the more technical aspect, and Nan also alluded to this, that if data changes, you want to be notified. And we do have event-based subscriptions available. So any certain data elements, when they change for a person, place, thing, course, yeah, we do get triggers from our different source systems, and we get updated, and we have nice little logic and processes that run that then send you some. If you're listening for the event, and we have different events, then we'll send you something that says, hey, you may want to pick up new information because something has changed for this course. So that is, you will also get it in an XML format, but that's more from a harvester, event harvester based pickup instead of an HTTP get one, which is one by one. So, Grace, you wanna?
Oh, so our system is JMS event based. So which means whenever something happens or any data element changes, an event is fired from our system, and based on that event, you'll be able to know which particular record has changed, whether it's a person or it's maybe a course, and then there are two ways our clients go about it. One is they build a harvester, which is a Java process that consumes the event. And when they consume the event, they find out what record has changed and go for the XML document. And then based on that XML document, then they do their own data translation, right? So some clients build their own harvester. If they don't feel like building their own harvester, we have common harvesters that we build for our clients. And what that does is you can tell us what you're interested in, right? And then when that data element, we build a harvester for you, and that's housed within our environment. And when data changes, right, we will harvest that event and get the XML, but send it to wherever you want it to send to. So we prefer it to be a downstream web service. However, we do have clients that do other kind of integration. It may be file-based, do file transfer, things like that. But our out-of-the-box solution would be just when something has changed, send an XML to the downstream web service.
Do you have anything for speed? I think so.
So the question is, do we have anything for students adding or dropping courses? And the answer is yes, we have events for those. So we have, so the transaction happens in PeopleSoft. Students add, drop, they do it all the time. Within PeopleSoft, PeopleSoft then sends us that update, which triggers then e-course, a couple of different events. And depending on which event you're listening for, you will get notified that, hey, something changed. So that would make that it's near real time. I never say real time because depending on traffic, network traffic. So you can get it. So that's the beauty of event-based. You can get it as near real time as you'd like.
Go through that integration checklist. So you started with Jira or ServiceNow, and we'll definitely help you get what you need.
So the question was whether the event-based is probably a better suit for him than the API, and we said we will gladly speak to him offline to see what options work best to meet his needs. And one doesn't preclude you from the other, so you can get data either way you want. Gary, did you have? Oh, no. Any other? And I don't know if you want to give like a list. I think in some of the sample slides, we've listed some of our clients. Please feel free to reach out to them. Ask them, what are deltas that they're hoping for, what are positives, how did it work, what could work better. That would really be helpful for us as well.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you. All right, so the last but not least, I have a small survey. It's tiny URL, MaIS survey, and it's really short. There are only 10, 11 questions. And if you are so kind to do the survey for me, I have candy for all you all.